Since the 1970s, the film industry has been contending with the chin. Now, Gareth Miles and Simon Appleton examine each year in the career of Bruce Campbell.
Cheryl, what's the matter with you? Did something in the woods do this to you?
No!
Cheryl, there's nothing out there. Trees do not attack people.
Ashley!
Hello and welcome to A Year in the Career. This is our second podcast in the analysis of Bruce Campbell's career. And I'm joined this week by Simon. How are you, Simon?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, can't complain. Looking forward to talking about 1981 and all the films that he was involved in during that year, of which there is one.
Yep.
So if you want to get in touch with us, you can by emailing us, Gareth at ayearinthecareer.com. And Simon, what about you?
I'm at Simon at ayearinthecareer.com.
Awesome. It flows off the tongue so very well. Where can people find you as well, Simon? Tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm a movie blogger. You can find my site at moviemustache.com. I'm also on Twitter at movie_mustache. And generally there you will find the ramblings of a movie nerd, both reviews and news and responses and anything movie related.
Excellent. And it's a good blog to have a good read through, good thorough movie reviews and that. You can get me at currently GarethMiles.com. Find me on Twitter at Gareth Miles as well. You can also get me on the Tech Addicts podcast on a weekly basis, released every Sunday, and then Talk Sport as well on a Wednesday morning at midnight, where I talk about gadgetry and all that kind of stuff with Jason and Andy, the resident DJs. So, 1981 was the first big year that Bruce Campbell came onto the scene. In the previous show, we looked at some of their shorts over the years, the ones that you can kind of track down quite easily. A large amount of them are available online from the likes of Josh Becker and Scott Spiegel. You can actually go to their website, Super 8 Films, and you can buy a DVD that is completely full of them, and I do plan to do that at some point after doing all of these shorts. Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, Bob Tapert, and a number of familiar names that we will go across over the course of the episode, decided to gang together, raise some money using one of the investment shorts that they'd made called Within the Woods, to put that together and build a production called The Evil Dead, originally called Book of the Dead. And this film would be basically the starting block of all of their careers. It's an incredibly notable film. It goes down in history as one of the biggest successes, given the budget to the gross ratio that comes in there. It's a legacy film that goes down in history as one of the biggest horror films ever made. Simon, you weren't familiar with you had heard of The Evil Dead, but you hadn't actually seen it prior to recording this show. Is that true?
Yes, it certainly is. I am very much not a horror fan. It's the one genre I've never really got into. I'd obviously, as you say, heard of The Evil Dead and heard it was quite iconic and it had quite a legacy. I did finally get around to watching Within the Woods, and I was actually very impressed, given that it was a low-budget, sort of almost like an advert to say, look, we want to make this film. This is kind of what we're going for. And I was very impressed. As you said that I should watch it, and I did. I was very impressed by it. What I found very interesting was how good like the blood effects were and things like that, and also that Within the Woods, it's the female character whose name escapes me that became the survivor. Mm-hmm. Bruce was the first taken. He was the one who basically caused all the trouble by digging up the grave. But I thought it was a very good advert, shall we say, and led into a very good film. Actually, I was very impressed. I'm still not a horror fan. I don't think that's ever going to change. However, I was actually very impressed given that it was a low budget film, of the production value of The Evil Dead. I actually enjoyed it quite a lot. The performances were very good. I mean, some of the makeup effects were fantastic. I mean, I've read about how the contact lenses were actually awful to wear, and they had to only wear them for a few minutes because their eyes were starting to suffocate, essentially. I can see how it's sorry to interrupt. I can see how it's an inspiration for films we've had more recently, like Shaun of the Dead, how they've looked at that and gone, how can we do that in London? and that's the sense now, because I watched Shaun of the Dead when it first came out. I love Shaun of the Dead, but having watched Evil Dead now, I can really appreciate how they've taken inspiration from that, and there's that same love of film there, and love of the genre, and I thought it was a damn good film. I mean, it sounds like it was a horrible experience to make, but well worth it in my opinion.
It's kind of a victim of its own success in that the story behind the actual creation of the Evil Dead is a little bit more interesting than the actual story that they tell in the film, because there's a distinct lack of story. It's basically the story of 5 kids who, I say kids, but they're, late teens, maybe early 20s, drive to youths. Drive to a cabin in the woods where they are going to spend a week or a weekend in each other's company. Now, obviously, in today's society, we would probably expect, they're going to take a keg and they're going to try and get with their chicks, and that's probably how it would be played out.
That's where I found this weird, because what was the weirdest thing about this film for me was not the whole, we went into a cabin in the woods and found a book that awakens evil dead spirits that are going to possess us and kill everyone, or the use of a smoke machine to create evil. No, the weirdest thing I found about it was a bloke thought he's going to go with his girlfriend, his mate, and his girlfriend, and bring his sister along to a cabin in the woods. I found that kind of odd, because there's going to be shenanigans. Why would you bring your sister as a fifth wheel?
The approach they made wasn't about, wild teens looking to get down and dirty with their significant other at the time. It's more along the lines, Bruce Campbell's character brings a little piece of jewellery to give to his girlfriend Linda, and she accepts it, and they're very schmoozy, romantic-y, if anything. It's not "Wahey, the lads," which it could have quite easily been. There's a bit more of a delicate approach, and I really appreciated that. It's almost like Sam and Bruce and things, we're getting investors' money and sweeping it up, and probably some of the investors were family members and things. They didn't want to make it seem like they were heading off for a big party in the woods with their girlfriends. They were making something with a bit more moral than you would have expected. But I guess, again, this was shot in like 1978, 1979, whenever Friday the 13th hadn't quite arrived, or had it? I can't remember. What year was Friday the 13th, the first one? It was 80. So, this was made as Friday the 13th was being made, which did have a certain amount of teens wanting to shimmy up against each other. But then The Evil Dead lays on, quite early on, the whole tree rape, which is an incredible thing to put in there. It's quite well cut in that it doesn't show anything particularly explicit, whereas nowadays it would be a great deal more in your face, and it would leave nothing to the imagination. Whereas the first time I ever watched this, I didn't actually get what was going on, but then I was kind of young at the time, and in the last podcast I explained how I got into it, and this was one of the first films that I saw after Army of Darkness, and it didn't pick up on that, and it was whenever I was reading about it later on that I realised, that's what that scene implied. Right, okay, crikey. But it goes from one extreme to the next, and then it lets you know, hang on, you're in for something here. That there's 20 minutes of setup, then 60 minutes of bonkersness going on afterwards, and it's somewhat unrelenting. And I love the way the film paces that out. Now, the first time I watched this, I wasn't particularly enamoured by it in any way. I didn't think it was great. Primarily because I was spoiled with the likes of Halloween and Friday the 13th. I'd seen all those before, and I loved them for everything that they did. And this came along as a bit schlocky, a bit... it was a muddy VHS that I had that wasn't particularly... Well, I suppose it was an official release and things, but it didn't look particularly good. But over the years, watching it then on DVD, where it's slightly more palatable and it looks a lot better, and most recently on Blu-ray watching it, it looks amazing, and it really stands up, and you can make out all of the detail and just how well it was rounded out. And I think the approach just works so well, and I really enjoy it more than I had done previously. What did you think of it whenever it was all over with? Did you think that was worth my while, or I can't believe I waited so long to watch that, or I'm never watching that again?
I think it was worth the wait. As I say, given it was the start of their career, like you say, it might have been a victim of its own success, but at the same time, I looked at it from the point of view that it's an incredible achievement for what they had to go through to do. Definitely worth the wait. I mean, also part of me felt like that was a roller coaster, sort of, like you say, because there's not much of a story. You don't fully. It's not like they've laid everything out for you. You just know that at some point, some historian, archaeologist, whatever it was, came to this cabin and stupidly uttered the words written in a book called The Book of the Dead. I mean, if that's not ever a hint not to read out loud what is in the book, yeah. But yeah, it was more a case of, wow, it's sort of a roller coaster sort of ride. What have I just experienced? You know, I sat there and processed it for a little while. I mean, some of the times when you see Bruce on screen, the looks of shock, terror, exhaustion, and generally not knowing what the fuck is going on. Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes I wondered, was that acting or was that genuine?
Well, yeah, I think because of the nature of the shoot, if you watch any of the commentaries or documentaries, they'll tell you what a nightmare this was and how they were up late surviving on what was it, coffee and 2-for-1 bread loaves that they could get for $1. It was a nightmare for them, it really was. So I do think that really comes across in some of the performance as well, of just how knackering everything that's going on is leaving the characters. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight was the character of Ash in this film is obviously quite different to the character of Ash going on through the series. Now, I'm not sure if you've seen Ash versus Evil Dead, the recent TV series.
No, I haven't.
No,
I hadn't seen it, and I thought, with starting this, I'm not going to watch that until I've seen all the other films, because I want to see them in the correct order.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Well, the character of Ash is pretty much on a journey himself, and in this film he starts out as a sweet young gormless boy who you what you think about when you see Ash in Ash vs Evil Dead. They are a world away from each other, but that's because he's spent his life having to battle this evil, and he turns into a womanizing, misogynistic prick he still has the chops for being a hero whenever necessary, whilst he's a bit of a dummy as well. And whenever we hit Evil Dead 2, the character does change. It's almost instantaneous as the film swaps from one film to the next. But Ash in the original Evil Dead is quite an interesting alternative for you to see in the character, because I think in the majority of the film, the character of Scott, played by Richard Demanencourt, who was he's not a particularly notable actor in any shape or form. I don't think he went on to too much. Evil Dead would be his big claim to fame, I guess. His character does most of the ass kicking in this film, and Ash sort of backs off and is somewhat more cowardly. He's
also slammed into a lot more furniture than anyone else.
Yes, but he's good at that, and I think Sam really got a kick out of doing that. It's the women who get possessed as well, and that's kind of the odd trait. And whenever the blood starts pumping and the pencils start flying into people's ankles, it really it turns on its heel and becomes an odd experience in horror. Having seen Army of Darkness first, I found the original Evil Dead quite difficult to stomach, because Ash wasn't doing the things that I expected him to be doing. And at this stage, I'm imagining you've probably seen Evil Dead 2 and you know how badass Ash does become.
Yes.
But it's a world away from this character. And I really do quite like that. And you can imagine what might have happened to Ash had that book not been read, had he not pressed play on the tape recorder that had been recorded on. And he probably would have had a nice little life with Linda and worked at the local factory.
Job and 2.4 children and...
Yeah. been a nice doofus up until she probably went and had an affair because he was such a boreback.
I did like that, though. I didn't like that he suddenly turned into this Schwarzenegger, Stallone type, take charge and action hero. He was a scared kid.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can imagine myself in that sort of situation being like, spending more time concentrating on keeping my underpants dry than anything else.
And I was reading a quick interview with Bruce in I can't remember what the magazine was, but I'd noted down here that he said that from the studio point of view, there's actually no studio cut or director's cut. What you see is what they made, and there won't be another cut of it ever done. There may be some deleted scenes or whatever that are put onto the Blu-ray and the DVD as extra features and things like that, but the Evil Dead will stay the way it is, and you won't get the producer's cut or the director's cut, because these guys poured so much love and creative influences into this cut that everyone sees when they watch it, and that's rare in a film, that you don't have any other meddling, and I really quite like that idea as well. This is what they wanted, this is what they got. And if all their careers were to suddenly come to an end after The Evil Dead, they'd be able to sit back and go, no, we did that right. That's what we initially set out to do, and that's what we got. Everything along the way was an adventure and a horror to them. So, the combination of the elements, I'm sure they must be incredibly satisfied, aside from Bruce Campbell, who sits down and watches this now, and he says he cringes at the performance that he gives, because it's obviously, well, it's not acting, it's reacting.
Yeah.
To quote the short film that he was in, where he's constantly being slammed against things and having blood poured over him, and just watching what's happening as Sam Raimi pours madness onto the screen.
Yes. You got to wonder about the psychology behind some of them sometimes, don't you?
Yeah. But I've got a newfound respect for The Evil Dead that I didn't have over the years, and I'm going to watch it again relatively soon, because it's, I don't know, maybe I've just lost time with it, or it's because the sequels are so much more enjoyable and accessible. Not accessible, but so much more enjoyable to sit down and watch for 80 minutes. In its running time, The Evil Dead does some pretty incredible stuff for the audience, and it really does give them a bit of a wild ride. And the reviews were fantastic for it whenever it came out, and the amount of influences that it had and knockoffs that it created. Everyone was thinking, well, if these three guys from Detroit can go out and do that, we can do it too. And I think that's...
They certainly set a bar. They certainly set a bar for horror and for low-budget films going forward.
Yeah. And whilst I'm saying that, the first 20 minutes are set up, and then there's 60 minutes of madness. What I really do like about one of the things that Sam Raimi did was he decides to slow down the action every now and again. There's a particular scene where I think Scotty leans out of a window and he has a look around, and Sam pans with him quite slowly. And it slows the action down, allows you to take a breather. But it also does one thing that I really appreciated, and that was it helped you paint the landscape. And I think a lot of films have a real problem with that. If you take, for example, The Fast and the Furious, you don't know where you are at any one time. There's just flashy stuff happening on the screen. And things are passing you by. You maybe don't get where people are logistically to each other. Whereas The Evil Dead, it's not afraid to show you the surroundings and show you where the cabin is and where people are in the cabin, and it helps bring you into the storyline, and you can identify a lot more with the characters, because it feels like you're there, and I really liked that about it, because it took the time to establish where things were, who was doing what, and that was one of the great courtesies that Sam afforded the audience was, okay, sit down, breathe, look around like Scotty's looking around, and now go again. And you've had your breath, and you're back into it. Slam bam, it's all happening. Did you feel that at all? Were you brought in by?
Yes, I felt very isolated. I felt the isolation that the characters felt, and they made good use of the woods and the cabin, and with just quick shots, they were able to emphasize the fact that these guys are out in the middle of nowhere. They are alone and without help, and obviously in a world where there aren't such things as mobile phones.
Yeah. Well, that's a fair point, actually. Bringing it back to, say, Friday the 13th, when one of the sequels, Jason is attacking, there's a bunch of cabins, so people can scatter and go and hide in different cabins and hope they're not found. If they try to leave the place, well, if they were to do that in Evil Dead, they can't go anywhere. I think there's a work shed, that's about it, in the cabin environment.
The bridge is down.
Yeah.
The bridge has suddenly disappeared. And
if you decide to take yourself off into the woods, you get attacked by the trees.
Exactly.
So you're really in big trouble. There is no actual escape for anyone who's in the cabin. You just have to wait it out until morning, I guess.
Just try to survive.
It's almost a bit like Die Hard, I suppose. It's Die Hard in a cabin where...
Yeah, in a way, it's cabin instead of skyscraper, and evil spirits instead of terrorists / hostage takers / thieves.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. Perfect. Well done. Evil Dead is Die Hard. So the film went on to gross, I think the IMDb reported it was something like 2.4 million. There was a glowing review from Stephen King that they were able to print on the poster, which really helped them sell the film and get it out there. Obviously in the UK, which was actually one of its most popular markets, it was put onto the video nasty list of the early 80s, and you couldn't get it out of the video library. But it was available on essentially the black market, and I think them putting it onto the video nasty list really helped it gain quite a bit of notoriety.
Exactly.
And when the VCR arrived, people were wanting to get that, and I think even the young ones, they're talking about the video nasties that they've got, and
that's the thing though. You take something like that and put it on a list that says you can't have this. You're making people want it more.
Yeah.
You might as well just surrender and let people have it, because you're actually making it more popular by putting it on that list.
It's a wonderful way of marketing things. I think people probably do that more so now.
Yeah.
Where it's the cut that they never wanted you to see, or something like that, or the one that wasn't suitable for theaters, or what have you. Trying to capture what they did here, and it wasn't an overnight success for them, which was the hardest part of it. You know,
they had to work hard to get it shown.
Yeah.
Traveling around to different theaters and showing it.
It's not that easy at that time, and also they were having to return gear and things like that and try and work out what to do next, and also just relax. I think in the last podcast we'd mentioned how there was one of the short films, The Blind Waiter, was made after The Evil Dead. So despite everything that they had endured up in the cabin, they still managed to go back and from reading biographies and things, I know Bruce took a security job, I think doing night shift, as did, was it Josh Becker as well? Josh Becker was writing Stryker's War and trying to get it done, or Bloodbath it was called, and they were all taking night jobs because this wasn't instant success. They were, they had to go back to reality and go, right, well, we've made this film, let's get Irvin Shapiro, sorry, and he'll work out how to release it, and he changed it from, I think, Book of the Dead to The Evil Dead. Yeah,
that was the suggestion, because book would people would associate with reading, which would be boring.
Yes.
It's on the one hand a bit shallow, but on the other hand, I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah, I think they did that with the Ten Commandments. No, wait, they didn't. No. Yeah, but there was only 10, so there's not much to read there. But Ivan Shapiro came on board, and he was instrumental in getting this out there and getting it seen, and it went to film festivals and things, and then eventually got picked up and released, and that's it all kind of just, it picks up from there. And it's crazy to think, as we explore the rest of the years, what happens with Bruce's career and the decisions that they make, that The Evil Dead being such, a box office success when you look at the figures over the course of time, that it took a while for his career to actually get where it is now. It took like 10 years for him to start actually getting proper roles in films. But, on the basis of this, he was the Evil Dead guy.
He will always be the Evil Dead guy.
Yeah, and no matter what he did, like even the next film that he went on to was a gentle drama. He could never shake that Evil Dead side of things. And they went with Irvin Shapiro because he'd handled some of George Romero's things, so he'd known what to do with Night of the Living Dead. I don't know if he did Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead, I can't remember. He knew what he was doing when it came to marketing this, but it was still an uphill struggle, despite the fact they had a legendary distributor in charge of this film. And I guess whenever you go to some of the DVDs, Blu-rays and things like that, every single element of The Evil Dead has been explored and talked about by Sam and Bruce and Rob. I did put on a commentary for one of them, I think on a recent Blu-ray. I watched the commentary as well, and they didn't actually talk very much about the film they were watching. They just talked about the background and how they had to get stuff, and then how they had to release it. And I think whenever it comes to a commentary, I prefer people to be sitting there talking about, what you're seeing on screen now, what we did was this, that, and then the other, and we had this problem with that, and this person, and we had cast this actor originally, and instead they brought this person in instead. But, you know, they're just happily sitting there talking about how they were getting the money to be able to do The Evil Dead, not the scene that is playing. And I guess it's because everything has just been talked about, and it's got to be just something that they just randomly come out with. They can just call up anecdotes about The Evil Dead just as it happened. They don't have to think about it too much because it's all there, resident, because they're so used to talking about it. And it's one of the few films that you can go and get every bit of information out of on DVDs and Blu-rays. In fact, I think some of the Blu-rays and DVDs have share features because, well, of licensing reasons, but because there's too much information to put on.
Yeah.
The commentary can't contain everything that you want, so you have to go and get multiple commentaries to be able to watch them talk about the events that are happening on screen as opposed to the events that happen behind the scenes, because there's so much to it. So I guess the legacy of Evil Dead was they obviously made Evil Dead 2.
Yep.
Then they made Army of Darkness. They made a bunch of games. I think there was 4 PlayStation games. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it wasn't. It might have been 3. There's a couple of Android and iPhone games as well that.
Just the fact that the games being made indicates and highlights the legacy of this one film that popped up out of nowhere in 1981.
I actually I was thinking about this last night. There was an Evil Dead game that came out back in the day for the Commodore 64. I wanted to mention that as well because I remember digging up and playing it on an emulator. Yeah, it was released on BBC Micro and Commodore 64 in 1984. And yeah, I think I had this on an emulator for the BBC. I don't remember it on Commodore. Looking at some of the screenshots, it's a difficult game to play whenever you're used to some of the more recent games. Obviously, is lacking in content and style and all that kind of thing. But it was doing what the hardware could do at the time. I think it did quite well. It was released 1984, so there was enough of a demand that they felt that they had to go Palace Software and create this game. It's nice to have that there. There's countless Evil Dead games. In 2000 there was Hail to the King on PlayStation. I remember buying that the day it came out. A Fistful of Boomstick on PlayStation 2, which I bought on the Xbox despite not having an Xbox at the time. Evil Dead Regeneration.
That's dedication.
It is, yeah. I still have Evil Dead Regeneration for Windows, the original release of it, in the shed. It doesn't work on Windows anymore because of technology and stuff like that. And then there was a couple for Android and iPad afterwards, which, are notorious for sampling sound and things like that. But it's still there. People obviously still see Evil Dead as a viable commercial property. And then, of course, we got to Ash vs. the Evil Dead, which is the TV series that they produced over the last couple of years. It got 3 seasons, and there's still talk of Evil Dead 4. There was the Evil Dead remake as well, which we will come to at a later date. I don't know if you've seen that, Simon, but
nope. Again, avoiding everything, watching it in order.
Well, it's worth getting excited about. it's a really good, strong horror film. Would you care to summarise the film for our listeners? Are you a big fan now?
I am a fan of it. I recognise the hard work and dedication that went into it. It was, like you say, I like the mystery of it. Because, as you said, there's not much of a story, and you go in and it's literally a case of what is going on and what is happening. I mean, just the journey in the car, the very famous car that belonged to Sam Raimi and his family, and then arriving at that cabin and just that bench, that swinging bench slamming against the cabin. Just, yeah, something's not right here. Something's bad.
Yeah.
And then a night of sheer terror. Genuine terror, because you have no idea what's going on, and even a nice little interesting ending with some stop motion animation, which yes, may not have been the best quality then. It looks a bit dated now, shall we say, but for what they were working with, another damn good attempt, and I can certainly see why these guys went on to greater success in later years.
Well, that's exactly it. Sam really directed the hell out of this. He was going to make this his magnum opus, if you like. And there's a perfect example of one scene where they're driving out toward the bridge, and they park the car, and Bruce goes to investigate to see what's going on. And as he walks across the screen, it's all off kilter at an odd angle.
I love that shot.
Yeah, any other filmmaker would have just done that standard, but no, Sam has to inject something into it and make it original, different, exciting. And that is The Evil Dead. It takes everything that you would expect from a typical slasher film and turns it up to 11. It makes it a plus version. It makes it more imaginative. Sam has gone, what has been done before? What can I do differently? And that's what he does. When it comes to the special effects, you have a myriad of wonderful stop motion animation, as you talk about, and the gore that pours out. It's wonderful to see, and you think these guys are operating on a limited budget, and what they got for their money is incredible.
Well,
absolutely
just like
incredible.
Things like, we can't afford firearm special effects, so you're going to shoot a real shotgun round at a door with a sack full of blood behind it, or something simple like that. Yes, as long as all the safety measures are adhered to and it's all done very carefully, but still, we can't afford special effects, so we'll just do it for real. We're in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, we'll make sure it's all safe, and you'll shoot through a door.
Yeah.
Job done.
Yeah, it's raw. It's fast-paced, and it's one thing that I reckon even kids today, whilst you say that it is a bit dated, and I do fully agree, I still think that the youth today could get behind it and enjoy it, because they do watch things, say, on YouTube, which are poorly produced or cheap or nasty or whatever, so they can easily get behind this. And I think this is one of those timeless films that thankfully is remembered well, and it's not being forgotten too easily. So it will always find a new audience or at least during our generation, and I'd like to think in the next generation. But there's always a new dog on the block that's kicking an old dog off. So, in the next episode, we'll be jumping forward to it should be 1983, but I'm going with 1984 because the film was technically released in 1984, and that would be going back, where we're going to have a bit of a chinwag about that, and something else as well. So, tune in next week for the opposite of The Evil Dead, which is going back. Alright, so if you want to get in touch with us, you can get me on email at gareth@ayearinthecareer.com, and Simon at ayearinthecareer.com as well. You can find me at garethmiles.com or at garethmiles on Twitter. Simon, what about you?
You can find me at moviemustache.com and at movie_mustache on Twitter.
Terrific. And other than that, take care.